In a world ruled by cold calculation, where grandmasters often hide behind solid defenses and symmetrical draws, one man dared to play with fire. Marc Esserman, not a super GM, not a household name, but a romantic, a swashbuckler, a believer in chaos over control. And in this game, he didn't just challenge the elite, he humiliated one, his opponent. Dutch heavyweight Loek van Wely, a seasoned top-level grandmaster, battle-tested in the fiercest tournaments of the modern era, a player who'd seen it all until he met Esserman in Orlando 2011. From the very first move, Esserman unleashes the Smith-Morra Gambit, a weapon most grandmasters scoff at. But this isn't theory. This is war. This is art. This is pure visceral chess, played not for safety but for legacy. This isn't just a game. It's a masterclass in aggression, a warning to the cautious, and a gift to every dreamer who ever believed that style could triumph over statistics. Esserman opens with the most aggressive and classical first move, e4. It's like planting a flag right in the middle of a battlefield and declaring, "This is mine." It immediately controls the center d5, and f5 opens lines for the queen and bishop and signals an intention to dominate early. Van Wely replies with Sicilian, a counterattack from the flank rather than direct confrontation. Instead of meeting the enemy in the open, black digs in on the wing, ready to strike when white overextends. It contests central control without symmetry and prepares a long-term queenside expansion. What if e5 instead of c5? That would allow a Roy Lopez or Italian gain familiar grounds. But Van Wely wants imbalance. Without hesitation, Esserman pushes d4, beginning the Smith-Morra Gambit. This is like tossing away supplies to move faster through enemy lines. He willingly offers a pawn to seize time and space. Black accepts the pawn, stepping into the murky waters of the gambit. Accepting a poison chalice, it may quench thirst or end the battle. Black grabs material and plans to defend, but risks falling behind in development. Esserman strikes again with c3, offering a second pawn to open the c-file and central lines. Like setting off a flare, exposing both sides to fire, but ensuring he shoots first to accelerate development and tear the center open. Van Wely takes it with dxc3, now 2 pawns up, but he's walking a tightrope, like stealing gold from a trap-laden cave. Esserman finally recaptures, completing his opening sacrifice. The knight rides in the open field like a general rallying his troops. Rapid development, center control, threats on d5 and e4. And now Van Wely plays nc6. The knight enters the stage like a cautious guard stepping into the fog. But this isn't just routine development. This is black starting to armor up. Having accepted the pawn and allowed white a lead in development, Van Wely knows he's walking a tightrope. So he brings in the knight not just to develop, but to prepare for the storm that's coming. But here's the irony: by playing nc6, Van Wely is following classical principles, but he's playing against an opponent who doesn't care about classical principles. Esserman is about to tear up the rulebook. White develops his kingside knight, classical and crucial. Think of a sentry posted near the king's fortress guarding against invasion. Esserman prepares castling, supports central control, and develops efficiently. What if Esserman played bc4 first? It's playable, but nf3 is flexible and prevents tricks like qb6 hitting f2 too early. Black shores up the dark squares by moving his pawn to e6 and prepares d5 or nf6 next. It's like reinforcing the front gate while preparing to counterattack. Enslavement closes off the bishop's path but solidifies central defense. The stage is heating up. Esserman has sacrificed a pawn, but in return, he's brought his knights to life, claiming the center like a seasoned general laying siege. Now begins Act 2, no movement not, where development clashes with defense and climbing becomes everything. White develops his bishop to c4, targeting the f7 square, the soft underbelly of black's position, like a sniper taking a position on a rooftop, watching the king's home with narrowed eyes. abc4 piles pressure on the king's side and prepares for rapid castling. The bishop stares into black's most vulnerable square. Van Wely plays a6, likely pairing b5 to kick the bishop away and start counterplay on the queen's side, like pushing a cart of dynamite to the front line. Slow, but with future impact. What if he played nf6 instead? That develops a piece directly, but Van Wely may have feared tricks with e5 or bg5 hitting too soon. He's trying to hold Esserman at arm's length. Esserman castles kingside, safely and swiftly. The king steps behind walls, trusting his soldiers to fight the war. Castling is vital here. It tucks the king away while bringing the rook into play. Ready to launch from f1, it also avoids any center tactics. Van Wely develops the knight to e7. A less active square, but possibly more solid. Like stationing a guard indoors. Safe, but not helping at the front lines. Yet, he's avoiding tactics and id5 or nd6 to reinforce the center. Esserman brings his bishop out with venom, pinning the knight and freezing black's kingside development. This bishop is like a hawk perched above, locking eyes with its prey, restricting movement. It stops ng6 from being useful, and now d5 becomes dangerous. Tactics are coming. Van Wely challenges the bishop immediately, playing f6 to push it back and unpin his knight. It's like firing a flare to force a sniper off the rooftop. Risky but necessary. Kicks the bishop and tries to regain breathing space. but it weakens the dark squares, especially e6 and g6. What if he played h instead? Too slow. Esserman could then ignore or sacrifice. Van Wely chooses the direct method, but opens cracks. Esserman calmly retreats, but to an even more dangerous post. Now both bishops eye the kingside like twin lasers, like a tactician repositioning troops for a better angle of attack after a bluff. BE3 pairs QB3 supports the center and holds fire on the long diagonal. Van Wely develops at last. The knight hops to g6, like stationing a knight up a castle turret. Protective, but not without blind spots. It pressures e5 and helps defend f4, g5 squares. He's building defense, but a bit too late. Esserman quietly tucks his bishop back to b3. But make no mistaking, this is a retreat with a reason, like stepping behind cover with a sniper rifle, waiting for the perfect shot. It clears the c4 square for a knight late and keeps pressure on the f7 diagonal. It also avoids na5 surprises. Van Wely now thrusts b5 forward, a classic counter-strike, like trying to start a fire on the other side of the battlefield, hoping it distracts the invading forces. And now the stage is set. With the bishop eyeing f7, knights ready to leap, and black walking a dangerous tightrope. The real fire is just about to begin. With each move, Marc Esserman sharpens his blade. Van Wely, up in material, now walks a narrow rope. The board isn't just opening, it's beginning to burn. Welcome to the fireworks. Esserman launches his knight to d5, a dominating central post. Like a soldier bolting onto enemy territory with a battle cry, daring a response, it attacks e7, eyes c7, and controls the heart of the board. It threatens both tactics and positional squeeze. Van Wely captures it, and he must. Otherwise, Esserman's threats become overwhelming, like disarming a ticking bomb but triggering another trap underneath. Glidnot Black hopes to ease the pressure, but it opens a new gateway. Esserman recaptures. And look closely, the e-file is opening, the d6 square is weak, and Black's king is still in the center. Imagine breaking down a wall in a siege. A breach is formed, and the attackers are coming. It opens lines, activates the queen and bishop, and clears the path for destruction. Facing down a storm, Van Wely tries to consolidate with e5. The knight steps in front of the king like a loyal bodyguard, trying to hold together a position that's already cracked and trembling. It's a classical reflex, develop, block, simplify. But when you're playing against a wave like Esserman's, classical doesn't always cut it. The knight on e5 is like a desperate sandbag in a rising flood. But against a player like Esserman, who sacrifices not for show but for soul, sandbags don't stop hurricanes. This move d6 is a dagger. Esserman doesn't just want pressure, he wants presence. It's like planting a flag deep inside enemy territory and saying, "No, come get me." This pawn cuts the board in half. Black's pieces, especially the bishop and rook, are locked out of the game. Van Wely tries to activate his bishop, finally entering the game. But it may be too late, like waking up the watchman after the gates have already been broken. Black hopes to pressure e4 or support his rook's entry. But the damage is already underway. What if a5 instead? It would have hit b3, but fails to change the course. Black is catch up while white is launching. Esserman sacrifices positional delicacy for direct action here by playing an xe5, like diving into a fire to pull out the core. He takes the pawn on e5 with deadly intent. It destroys Black's central pawn, opens f5 threats, and brings new tactics to life. f4-5 is looming. Van Wely accepts change with fxe5. Pawn takes knight. But this is not just a simple recapture. It's like opening a sealed vault, unaware of the trap waiting inside. The pawn does not just take the piece. It rips open the f-file, exposes the king, and lays the groundwork for Esserman's masterpiece to unfold. With this one move, Van Wely unintentionally gives white exactly what the Smith-Morra thrives on: activity over material. The f-file, once quiet, is now a hideaway, a future battleground. And as Black's king sits behind these broken walls, Esserman begins to circle, like a hawk with the scent of blood in the air. And here it comes, f4, like lighting the fuse. This pawn thrust threatens to blow open the king side and rip through Black's defenses. It reinforces e5, ice f5, 6, and opens diagonals for the bishop. Esserman is about to toss gasoline on the fire. What if white plays re1 instead? It would be classical, even wise, but too tame. Esserman wants destruction, not diplomacy. Van Wely plays qf6, centralizing the queen, but he's walking into fire. Like a commander stepping onto the front lines, brave, but perhaps unaware of the incoming ambush. It attacks f4 and pressures d6, but the queen is dangerously exposed. Esserman sees it, and he's ready. The queen has stepped into the fire. The bishop lurks, and the pawns march with unstoppable force. Van Wely is up in material, but Esserman is up in momentum, space, and pressure. Now the trap begins to close. Esserman captures the queen's bait, fce5, a bold, calm exhale before the storm, like removing the final support beam in a crumbling fortress. Now the walls must fall. Opens the f-file, invites the queen into e5, where she becomes a tactical liability, also frees re1, bg5, and allows the pawn on d6 to keep suffocating Black's position. Van Wely snatches the pawn with qx e5, hoping to consolidate and trade. Like grabbing treasure in a crumbling temple, the ground is unstable and the ceiling's about to fall. Centralizes the queen, aims to pressure d6 and f5, but it stands in the path of every tactic about to explode. Esserman plays bg5 pinite, pining the king, unleashing pressure on e7, like pointing a loaded arrow straight into the heart of the enemy camp. Ties down the knight, pressures the e7 square and sets up bf7 check-it. The pin is paralyzing. Van Wely attempts to unpin with be7. A logical move, but like trying to hold back a flood with a towel. He's closing the blinds while the house is on fire. Prepares to castable. If ever possible, Glen movement covers e7, but it's reactive, not proactive. There are no good choices anymore. Here it is. The cannon fires. bf7 check, sacrificing material to destroy black's coordination, like Esserman throwing a spear straight into the king's chambers. Forces the king off castling rights, a brutal disruption of safety. The black is now completely exposed. The king walks to d8, away from castling into the cold, like filling the throne only to land on the battlefield, forced move. But from here, every square the king touches becomes a liability. What if k8 instead? Also bad. White would double rooks, swing the queen in, and flood the king's side. Black has no good square. White plays dx e7 check. A seemingly simple pawn move, but it's pure dynamite, like triggering a buried landmine right beneath the enemy's castle. This isn't just a capture, it's a fork of destruction. It hits the knight on e7, continues the attack on f6, and opens the d-file even more. It's part of a layered tactical blueprint. Black must recapture. Nx e7, trying to stop the bleeding, like patching a wound with bare hands during a hurricane. Regains the material. But look at the board. Now both the d-file and f-file are wide open. Black's king is vulnerable and his pieces are poorly coordinated. This knight is sitting on a square that will soon become radioactive. Esserman calmly plays qd2, and it may seem soft at first, but make no mistake. This is the quiet before the final strike. Like a sniper adjusting the final aim, one breath pull the trigger. Prepares rac1 to double on the c-file. Eyes a5 and d6 diagonals, connects the rooks, and most dangerously, it's ready into g5 or a5 depending on how black responds. This is the kind of move that teaches control. Esserman isn't rushing. He's tightening the web like a predator circling its prey with full dominance. Van Wely plays kc8, tucking his king on the queen side, hoping to flee the chaos. Like a king abandoning his crumbling palace and hiding in a corner tower, hoping no one saw him slip away. This is survival instinct. Plain and simple. The king steps out of the pin and off the file, avoiding back rank dangers. But the damage has already been done. The center is open, his army is scattered, and White's attack is far from over. Esserman slams down rac1 check, a rook entry that isn't just a check, it's a declaration of doom, like turning the spotlight onto a fleeing enemy. The king has nowhere to hide now. The final act begins under bright lights. It brings the rook to an open file with tempo. It tightens the noose around black's king. It unifies white's entire arming queen, bishop, rook, all aligned for the kill. Black blocks with nc6, the last remaining piece that can defend, like throwing a piece of furniture against the door as the wolves scratch and snarl from the other side. Covers the check and tries to activate a long dormant knight. But it's just too little, too late. Esserman calmly plays rfd1, doubling the rooks with perfect harmony, like pulling the drawstring on a mouse, slow, deliberate, but inescapable. Both rooks now control the central files, d and c. The king is caged. The threat of rx d7 and d5 ideas now fills the board with danger. Why not swing the queen yet? Because Esserman knows how to build tension. This is not about rushing, it's about complete domination. rfd1 is the perfect restraining move. No tactics yet, just pressure. Van Wely tries to hit back with qf5, attacking f4 and dreaming of trades, but this queen is a ghost of its former self. Like a tired soldier waving a white flag in one hand and a broken sword in the other, eyes f4. A poisoned pawn at this point tries to reduce the pressure with exchanges, and he hopes that Esserman blinks. Esserman plays bf4, a seemingly gentle move, yet it slices like a scalpel, like a surgeon's final cut before the organ is removed. Quiet, clean, lethal. Tempts black to take on f7, knowing full well what comes next. Unleashes coordination between rook, queen, and bishop. The bishop leaves g5 not to retreat, but to bait the final error. And Van Wely takes the bait, plays qx f7. But this is no escape. It's a trapdoor into checkmate, like a villain stepping into what he thought was a safe house, only to hear the click of a lock behind him. Removes white's pressure on f6, simplifies the position. But it doesn't account for what's coming next, and that's Esserman's final combination. Esserman calmly plays qd6, a queen move that doesn't just threaten, it commands, like a general walking right into enemy territory with no armor because he knows the enemy is already defeated. Targets the c7 pawn and eyes c6, threatens rx c6, a devastating breakthrough. Fixes the queen in a dominating central post, both attack and anchor. But more than that, it's the declaration. There is no escape. Van Wely plays kd8, quietly trying to stay alive, like a monarch backing into the last corner of a burning castle, hoping for air in a sealed room. Gets off the c-file, trying to escape coming tactics. But it's only a stalling move, because there's no real defense left. Boom, rx c6, the rook crashes through, a cannonball tearing down the final wall, like detonating the foundation of a fortress after weeks of siege. The structure doesn't collapse piece by piece, it implodes. It's the final tactic in a flawless combination. The c-file is now shattered. This rook sacrifice clears the path for the queen to deliver the final blow. And notice this, Esserman isn't worried about material. He's giving up a whole rook because he knows what follows isn't just winning. It's inevitable. Van Wely accepts the sacrifice. He has to, like catching a grenade to protect the rest of your army, but not realizing you're the last soldier left. Takes back material. But in doing so, places the bishop right in the path of doom. Now the board is quiet momentarily, but the queen is still watching, still waiting. And there it is, qxc6. No check, no mate on the board, just silence. But in that silence, total collapse, like a sword sliding gently into the heart after a long duel. No scream, just the end. Why this move ends the game? Black's king is completely cornered on d8. The queen now controls c7, d7 and the entire 6th rank. There is no way out, no more resources to defend. Black's bishop is gone, the rooks are undeveloped, the king is isolated, and the queen can't counterattack. And just like that, with a quiet queen slide to c6, the board falls silent. No fireworks on the surface, no mate on the board, just resignation, just devastation. Van Wely, a seasoned grandmaster, a war-hardened warrior, lowers his head and tips his king. Not because he was tricked, but because he was outplayed move by move, idea by idea. Every piece Marc Esserman moved was a note in a symphony. A story not told with words, but with vision, calculation, and courage. This wasn't just a win, it was a message that the underdog, the aggressive spirit, the fearless dreamer can stand eye to eye with the elite and leave them breathless. From the first pawn thrust on e4 to the final whisper of qxc6, Esserman didn't just play chess. He played music, and we just witnessed a masterpiece, one that will echo in chess history forever.